Good afternoon. George Bernard Shaw once said that life for many is nasty, brutish, and short. I think our energy future will be dynamic, disruptive, and demanding. And in that future, I think one of the most challenging issues is what are the temporal realities that we're dealing with? Is it 2 years? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 40? Well, of course, it's all those. And one of the challenges in preparing for that future and understanding what it means is that different dynamics occur over the course of time. I think there are the following forces that we have to consider before we can even answer the question, are we ready for transition and could we engender trust from them? Let me highlight the ones that we're seeing in the market even today, faster than you might appreciate. Energy is considered mostly a commodity. It's not. It's going to be a service. And in that service, people will value different things with services they buy, just like with other services. They may say, I want to buy my energy with no carbon reduction, or I want it with carbon reductions, or I want to see this service have more local economic development through an energy cooperative providing the energy to my home or not. So the first dynamic you have is that people will look more and more as energy as a service, not as a commodity. While we regulate and manage it and think about it as a commodity. Secondly, we have very unitary flows. We have wires that send energy here, electricity here. We're moving to a much more diversified source system where it could come from multiple places. People will have more choice, and they already have more choice now. Thirdly, one of the things we value about energy, one thing we're very good at in Canada is having a stable system, reliable power. Well, in fact, we're going through a much more dynamic system where, in fact, we might see times where the patterns of demand change. Until 2 years ago, the energy peak in Ontario was never in September. For the last 2 years, it was. We didn't even know that 5 years ago. Will it still be that in a few years' time? Maybe it will be in November. Because people assume with energy that demand will stay the same. The biggest single factor changing energy is how demand is changing, and how we are consuming differently, and how people will probably consume per capita less over time. The whole curve of energy has been per capita demand this way. We might even see it go, well, I think it will go this way. Fourthly, we like a system with control. Now we can say, here's how regulations are done, here's how markets controls, here's how prices are set. Some of those are set in global markets, as Mike's mentioned, particularly with the hydrocarbon sector. We're actually moving to a situation of chaos. Now, that's not a bad thing. Chaos is where innovation occurs. Chaos is where there's disruption, but there can be innovation in the process. Our energy systems are largely based on long-term assets. We've talked about energy generation facilities like gas plants or renewable energy wind plants or pipelines. Those are long-term assets. We're actually going to go to a future where short-term technology might cycle that very, very differently. And so you invest, you make decisions for long-term assets, but wait a minute, now technology is short-term. We're on the cusp of moving from landlines to mobile phones and from taxi cabs to Uber, but in a much more important part of the economy. We've looked very much at looking at things that are linear. Producer goes to consumer. We're looking at something that's much more circular and connected. My home with my solar panels can power my neighbor's cars with net metering, who has an electric car. And I may use that electric car because I work in the shared economy, and that's exactly what happened last weekend. That's not a market that we know. We look very much at seeing things that a jurisdiction need to define. I'm with Mike. I think we're an energy taker. We're a market taker in this change. It's going to be much more global and dynamic. It's not Ontario. It's not Canada. It's not the United States. This is much more than that. And so what we're going to have is more relationship, is more primacy, where I do believe trade and capital flows and the way capital moves and other kinds of relationships. People might say, you know what? I'm going to buy my charging stations from indigenous communities because they happen to be indigenous. So rather than selling gas and smokes now, I'm buying my health food from them and I'm buying my electric charging from them because that's my choice. So relationship becomes more of a primary decision, the way people look at markets. People look at things that are very centralized, structured decision making. The reality is digital data will drive most of our decision making, and the digital data will be available to everyone with controls and privacy that are out there. Every major user in Ontario has a smart meter. In fact, almost every user in Ontario has a smart meter. We haven't begun to mine that data yet. That process will begin now very soon, and some companies will come just into that space. We have energy silos, but markets will become both amalgamated and diversified. Heat and cooling will come together with electricity. Electricity may get diversified, different kinds of electricity at different times in different spaces. And we've approached energy as a sovereignty issue on the part of jurisdictions and countries, and even by companies, who get licenses that give them sovereignty. But we are moving to a future that is democratic with energy. So, are we ready for that future? It's not about Canada being ready. I don't think anyone is ready. In fact, the research we've done is no one in the world is ready for that future. So therefore, what do you need? You need time, capital, and know-how or knowledge. Well, I can't help you with time or capital because we don't have enough of either. But that's where knowledge is key, and that's why I think the trust and transition process is really important. If we can inform how energy scenarios work, how market systems evolution works, and how economic paradigms work, then you'll engender trust with people. That's when people will say, in an energy democracy future, I can now choose that energy gives me more value, because it's a service. And the value has both economic value for me or others. It has social value for me or my family or my community or my country. And it has value environmentally because of what I choose to have value for, like carbon. So that's where I think we have to go. And I think the process here is going to be governed by new ideas, new know-how, new knowledge, and new know-how. Thanks.